Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you about my development process of skills throughout D8. So I'll be taking you through the skills that I've learned and throughout the 8-week process. So where did I start? Before I even made the plan, I decided on what skills I wanted to develop each week for the project. In this project I wanted to achieve the brief by showing and documenting my process of skills through a video format. So, on my website, each week you can see that I've showed what I wanted to do at the beginning of the week, and then at the end of the week I've said whether I've achieved it. And I've done that every week, as you can see. So the skills I wanted to develop was creating my own synths, developing film composing skills in general, and experimenting with Logic stock instruments. So, I made my plan by writing down everything that I wanted to do on a piece of paper. I didn't do it online, I did it all on a piece of paper so I could make notes on how I wanted to do everything each week. So for week 1, I was going to do some research on how film composers started their journey of film composing and what techniques they used. And then in weeks 2 and 3, I was going to pick a clip that I was going to compose to and develop my skills in film composing in general. Then in week 4 and 5, I was going to research my second skill and I was going to develop that and show my processes. And then week 6 and 7, I was going to get my third skill and again develop that. And then in week 8, I was going to show the evaluation and how I think I've developed my skills and if I have or if I haven't. So the next step was, once I created my plan, I was able to then register and progress with the project and start week 1, which was my research. So again, here at the top, there's the goal for what I wanted to do and achieve in week 1. So I'm going to talk about a bit that I've learned about Hans Zimmer. So his style of composing is that he gets his film clip first and he composes to his films. So he doesn't get, sometimes he has an idea and then that fits to that film that he's composing to. But most of the time he gets the clip or the film that he's composing and then he writes to the clip, which is an interesting way. And then I also found some quotes really interesting. So if there is a rule, break it. That's the only way things move forward, which I found really interesting because sometimes you might get stuck in a loophole where you might not know what to do next. So sometimes you might have to break the rule of using this note in a scale to move forward. Also, another quote is important that I found was, the most important word about music is the word play. Because if you don't play, you won't progress. And also his ideas stylistically, he gets them, and then if he doesn't think they fit, he will still work with them to try and make them fit, even though if he doesn't think they're going to fit. And he also entered the world of film music in London. He collaborated with a film composer called Stanley Myers, and then from there he became successful. Also, I did a bit of research on John Williams. So, he has a different way of composing to Hans Zimmer. He sometimes goes to the piano because he was a jazz pianist before he started film composing. He goes to the piano and he starts writing ideas and keeps them in a music diary. And then when he gets the film, he'll go to his music diary first and pick, if there's an idea that fits that film, he'll pick that and then stylistically create ideas around that. So it's a different way of composing, where Hans Zimmer, he has the clip most of the time and composes to his films, where John Williams will have ideas from the past and he'll bring them into his work that he's doing now. He also says he doesn't know where his musical inspiration comes from, he just gets ideas and he creates them from that. He says that he's very lucky to be intoxicated by music all the time, which helps his idea of composing, because he's working with so many good artists with him. They all collaborate to make the best project that they can. So that's a few little bits of research that I've found. There's some other videos that I came across before I progressed, which were how they make the sound of Batman and Dune. It just gave me an idea of how they progressed in some parts of their project, or where they started. And it's interesting to see all like the behind the scenes of what happens with music. It's not just going to be someone sitting on Logic. It's going to be actually creating actual sounds with cardboard on the floor, so it's not just as simple as it seems, which was really eye-opening. So going on to week 2 and 3. Before I even started the project, I wanted to show my skills beforehand. So a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago, I composed 2 pictures, and it shows my compositional skills that I did before. So I'm going to just show you just a bit of this. So hopefully you can see a difference by the end of the project. So in week 2 and 3 I started composing to the clip that I'd picked. And for this film clip I wanted to create a mood. I didn't want to just have a piece of music and it just showed the film. So I wanted to create a mood and emotion for the viewers. I wanted them to be attracted and drawn into the piece and not just watch it and go, oh yeah, this is great. So I started creating the piece by writing chord progressions and just messing around on the piano. And then I got chord progressions that fitted the mood of the piece. And then I started to create ideas and develop those ideas around that chord progression that I picked to create an emotion. Once I did this, then I started layering up ideas and started thinking about my musical theory and whether I wanted to incorporate what texture I wanted to use, or whether it was just going to be monophonic throughout. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of what I got in week 2 and 3. So once I'd got an idea, then I was able to develop around that. So what skills have I developed within week 2 and 3? So originally I wasn't going to be developing my music theory, but I thought as I was getting to the writing processes, I needed to develop my music theory to develop my writing process. So in that week I did some more research and just refreshed my knowledge on music theory, such as chord progressions, sevenths. So skills I've learnt so far is my composition ability. I think I've improved my skill in film composing as I've managed to create a mood for the audience, which previously I never writ to create a mood. I was just writing to the piece and hoped it fit, where this I wanted to draw the audience in by them listening to the music. But another skill again is my music theory. I just didn't want to have my basic music theory, I wanted to develop that even more to make the compositions more developed. So here, as you can see, I went onto musictheory.net and learnt and researched all about sevenths because I wanted to add sevenths again to create a mood. I also went and did some more developed research and found a different website. And here it will say what I've done and how I've incorporated it into my piece. So if you build a triad on C, you will use the note C, E, G. If you add another note, a seventh above a C, then you will have C, E, G, B, which again is your seventh chord. Again, I've added melodies, a simple melody of a single musical phrase, just a few short notes. Also, when a series of notes and rests repeat, it's a rhythmic pattern. In my piece I have a rhythmic and melodic pattern as the main melody has the same recurrence of notes and rests in time. Harmony is the sound of two or more notes heard simultaneously. In my piece there's a lot of harmonic rhythms in the background complementing each other to create a thicker texture. Also form is recognised in terms of repetition, contrast or variation. Form is usually shown with letters, so for example mine's A, B, B1, as section A is completely different to sections B, but B and B1 have slightly different elements, but are completely different to section A. And I've also added call and response into my second developed piece. When the music interacts and has a musical conversation, such as two phrases for example. In my piece I have a melodic phrase. After it's repeated a few times, I wanted to feel like the music was having a conversation with the instruments within the piece. So in section B1, I had the original music phrase carry on playing on the strings, but I was also having the same phrase but developed a bit, having that response element to it. And again, there's a bit more here that I've added. So the big one for mine is cadences. So with my piece, so my melodic phrase, it ends on the 5, so it stops and it makes it feel like the phrase has stopped. Where if in other instances I could have made my melodic phrase end on the 1, or so it makes it feel like it hasn't stopped and it might want to go further. So I found that very interesting to say that I think it was very interesting to think that I've included a perfect cadence within my melodic phrase. So that's just a bit of music theory that I've learned. So in week 4 and 5 I wanted to start developing my second skill, and this is where I decided to do Logic stock instruments. So I moved on and I started researching how I can develop, instead of just going onto the instrument library and picking strings. I was originally going to do synths for this week, so I was starting to research synths, and then I went onto a video and it showed me a different way how you can access strings and you can make them sound how you wanted them to sound. So I decided to do Logic instruments this week then, and I found it very interesting. So you went into to go and add an instrument, but you went into the drop down box then, and it came up with like strings, horns and everything like that. So that's the way that I started researching and did my skills on that one. Also I wanted to move forward. I thought about going outside of Logic, so using plugins such as East Meets West, which is here. I did some research on these, and if you just go onto the website, it showed you what kind of plugins that you could use. So I wanted cinematic plugins, and it put a video up and it showed you the sound of what you're looking for and what you wanted to create. So it gave you some information of the plugin, and then it gave you some demos of what it could sound like and how you could use that plugin. So I thought these were very interesting because moving forward, if I wanted to develop my skills even more of Logic stock instruments, that's how I could progress. Here is just me showing you how I use that way of research that I've learned and how I found it. So you went into the drop down menu and there was loads of options here. And then if you click on it, you could change the dynamic range, you could change the length of notes, you could change the instrument, you could change the depth of the notes as well, and also the volume. So that was the way I used Logic instruments in this project. So at this point, I wasn't on track with my plan, I was actually ahead. So skill 2 that I developed in week 4 and 5 only took me a week. I thought it'd actually take me longer. So I was ahead. So going forward, I had to make some adjustments to my plan. So in week 5, I was going to take a week to work on skill 3, which was developing synths to fit the mood. And then in weeks 6 and 7, I was going to compose another track to show my development overall. So I had 3 different processes then. So I had the beginning project, and then I had the middle project of me developing the skills, and then I had the end project to show the skills developed. So week 5, I was going to work on synths. For my composition, I wanted to incorporate synths as my second skill. As I was researching and watching videos on Logic Stock Instruments, I came across all those synths. I used that video that I found for the Logic Stock Instruments again to how to research and create those synths, because I didn't know how the synths worked. I didn't know how what the dials were, because we did it last year, but it weren't something that I was really good at. So I watched some YouTube videos on how to work with the ES2, and it helped me kind of know where to move forward next. So what I did then is went back to my clip, started to try and create a synth, but then I was kind of stuck because the clip that I picked didn't really need synths in it, because it was sad. So at the end, I kept watching my original video that I composed to, and I was like working off its synths in. And then at the end, there's like some missiles going over to hit the island. So I thought I'd try and recreate the sound of the missiles going over with this ES2. But before I did that, I did some research on the ES2. So such as the dials, positions, so the 1, 2 and 3 dials. They give you the control of your synth's attack and delay and your sustain, which I didn't know that before. But you can also subtract stuff off it, and you can pick your different waveforms, and you can have filters, and there's also as well the slightest change that you do to the dial will make such a big difference and there's such a big impact onto your synth. So here is just my piece. I've added synths at the end here, and these are some of the synths that I've worked with, and this is just showing you what I did with my synths. Do I think I've developed my skill of synths? I think I've developed some basic knowledge of it, because beforehand I didn't even know what the dials meant. Do I think I could develop it even more? Yes. I think I could work with synths outside of Logic, so I've been shown some synths online that are really different and would work well with different styles of music. So I think moving forward, that's something else I could use to progress. So what's next? So for week 6 and 7, I then picked a final clip. Well, I chose a different way of composing. I had a final composition, and I did Hans Zimmer's style of music and composing for the first clip, the James Bond clip. And then for this style, I started writing on the pianos, loads of ideas, trying to get some rhythmic ideas, melodic ideas. And then I got a really good melody and a really good chord progression, and then I showed it to one of my peers, and they went, this will fit really well with Downton Abbey. So we put what I had done in that little session to Downton Abbey, and it fit really well, and then I was able to develop and then create a mood of the piece. And then I was able to start adding stuff with my musical theory into it, adding textures, melodic ideas, and I was also able to create form and a structure to the piece. So here's just a little screen recording from the session. It just shows you how I started, and then how at the end that we put, here's me just creating an idea, and then at the end how we put it to a clip and it fit really well. So I tried John Williams' style of composing and actually found that better. it was really interesting to do the two different ways and how different they actually are when it comes to composing. So in this one as well, I wanted to also, because I'd done all my skills that I've learned, I wanted to push myself even further. So I used the Eats Meats that I said that I was going to use earlier in the project. And I found this actually a really easy site to work with. So I did my research on what kind of plugins were the best ones on there for my style of composing that I wanted to do. And then I got up the software and I changed all my instruments and added some call and response elements into it then. So here you can just see what plugins and what I've done and what instruments I've used off Eats Meats on my instruments. So when I put these instruments off, I changed them. It was such a massive difference, and it actually felt like you was listening to something that an actual orchestra had made instead of it all being programmed in, which was really interesting because that one little plugin has made such a slight difference. I only changed like the first three, and it made such a big difference before I even came on changing all the instruments. So yeah, it was really easy software to work with as well. It wasn't complex. It was really accessible, and I also used some reverb into there as well. And there was such a wide range of composers that you could pick from as well. There wasn't just one that you could just pick from. There was loads, and it actually made a big difference. So it was such a good software to use, and I think I've definitely developed my skills of working outside Logic instruments, because beforehand I did a composition last year where I just picked that composition and I made loads of instruments on Logic, but it was very basic. It didn't sound like an actual orchestra. It sounded very processed, where these plugins were really, really helpful and made it sound like an actual orchestra. So here you can see the beforehand, so I'll just show you the beginning. So this was before using Logic plugins. And then this is it after. So there is a big difference when you actually listen to it, maybe on headphones as well. You'll be able to hear, and if you turn it up, you'll be able to hear a massive difference. And I think it just sounds so much better with the plugins that I've used. It makes it sound so much nicer. So here's the James Bond clip. This is using Logic instruments, and it just doesn't. It creates a mood, but if you see a difference with when you're using plugins, it just makes it so much nicer. It flows nicer as well. The piece isn't just. It doesn't sound like it's just been chucked onto a DAW. It actually sounds like you've used different, actually older instruments as well. So, how can this help me in the future? Learning all about creating synths and developing my skills within film composing will help me in the future, as I've been able to work with various plugin software such as East Meets West, and because I know how to work with various plugins, softwares and skills that I would use in the future, it will give me a bigger push as a film composer, as I've learned and gained practical and theoretical musical experience before attempting to find work as a film composer, as it's important to gain skills for the role that I want to be. So the evaluation of my D8. Do I think I've developed my skills? I certainly think that I have. I think I've developed some skills more than others, such as using plugins for instruments, then synths. I've definitely developed every skill that I said that I wanted to develop, but I think I could definitely moving forward push my knowledge and development further. Do I think I will take these skills with me that I learned in the future? I definitely have up my knowledge on this project, and I feel comfortable with everything that I've learned. So if someone said to me, can you teach me how to do this, I could definitely tell them and show them. And do I think that my plan was effective? I definitely do. I think having that change in plan in the middle was helpful, because so I had the original plan, but then also having to change it, I was acknowledging that I needed to stay on track to get me to the end project. So yeah, that's it.